Hello, everybody, and welcome to my fabulous Autobiography 2022 edition. So, my name is Anantjot Kosa, full name, and I was born at the Women's Hospital on December 12, 2004 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I was born at 9:05 p.m. Not that that really matters, but I thought I would mention it anyway. So, in 2004, I moved to India from Canada when I was about 9 months old to live with my grandparents as my parents earned their livelihood here in Canada. I lived there for around 2 years before I moved back when I was around 3 years old. So, I went to preschool around 2007, and this was very difficult for me because I was used to speaking Punjabi in India, and so it was very hard for me to understand how to communicate with my classmates and communicate with my teachers because I didn't speak English very well. In 2008, we moved houses to live closer to Amber Trails area. This also meant moving schools, although this was a brief period because ultimately I moved to Edmonton with my mother in 2009 via train. We moved there and moved around quite a bit. We lived with my aunt at one point. We also lived with my uncle in his apartment. And we also at one point lived in a women's shelter. So we moved around from these places a little bit during my time in Edmonton. And living with my uncle ultimately led to my love of films. I watched my first ever movie there, called the Avatar movies with my uncle, and this ultimately led to my love of movies and led to me wanting to pursue acting as a career. And while me and my mother lived in the women's shelter, we had quite a bit of adventures there as well. There was one night where it was very dark and very cold, and we got lost from the women's shelter, and we had a hard time finding our way back. We struggled getting back to our room, and my toes were frozen because it was very snowy. And although this was a point in my life where I didn't have very much, I still felt very privileged to have my mother and the opportunities that I did to be with her. So in 2010, I moved back to Manitoba and started a new school. I went to Arthur E. Wright in grade 1. And this was very difficult again because there weren't very many children who looked like me, and it was hard for me to connect with them. And so this resulted in a bit of bullying that I endured, but ultimately I ended up making friends at some point, but it was a bit of a rough period just getting started. From 2011 to 15, I started my elementary school days. So during this time, I became a patrol, and I would safely help the younger children cross the street, and this was my first taste of responsibility, and I loved it. So I helped a lot of children get across safely those many afternoons. This was also a time for me where I learned to use my creativity to stimulate my brain using just random objects around the house. So anything I could find, I would cut up and create into something else. I even used cardboard boxes at one point to create vehicles, and I'd cut leg holes in them so they could move around, and that's what that little red blob is meant to be. And so I just would find random objects around the house and create whatever I could, and this would really stimulate my creativity. In 2016, I started middle school, and the defining topic for me in middle school was Harry Potter. I was obsessed with that little British boy, and I couldn't wait to go to school and tell all my friends about the new chapter in the book I'd read or anything revolving around Harry Potter. And this was the defining topic for my middle school days. And anytime I think about middle school, Harry Potter is always involved. And I just loved what J.K. Rowling did with those books. So from 2017 to 2018, I developed a love of running. I realized I was actually kind of good at running, and so I joined the cross-country team my middle school offered, and I went to all the meets, and I had a lot of fun running, and specifically long distance. I loved to do the longer distances of running, and it didn't really feel tiring to me. It just felt really good in my head. So there's just me. There's a lightning bolt to signify my fast speed. So in 2018, I began high school. High school was a very scary time because I had no idea what to expect. I had never been in a school this big before, and I knew that my grades were going to start to really matter, and I had no idea what to expect. And it was very frightening. But I developed a love for music. Here I learned how to play trumpet, and I also played flute. These were both in my regular concert band. In jazz band, I learned how to play the bass guitar, and I was very excited to learn how to play this. And this was a major focus for me for most of my high school career. And I really loved playing music. I also really loved theater and performing in plays. I remember I practiced my French accent for 3 weeks to prepare for the role of Lumière, but unfortunately I did not receive the role, and I was very sad, 3 weeks down the drain, but not really, because even if I got small roles, I played my heart out, and I memorized all my little lines, even if they were just 1 or 2 sentences. And I had a lot of fun ultimately, and I think the theater family was much more meaningful to me than getting a role. I also continued on with cross country in high school, and it became a lot more serious for me because I was doing running all year round. In the beginning of the year, we had cross country season, then we had track and field, then outdoor track and field, so I was basically an athlete for the entire year, and I loved it. And I really got a chance to bond with my teammates and win a couple ribbons here and there, and I had a lot of fun. I also excelled within my science class and my social studies class. These were my absolute favorite. Although I did quite well in freshman year, I think that I really enjoyed my science class, and I just learned quite a bit about the fundamentals that would ultimately aid me in my future with that. Then in 2019, I joined the Met School, and this was ultimately the best decision I've ever made regarding school, because I was starting to get more serious about my future and career options and goals I had, and the Met School was ultimately the best option for those things because I get to go out into the community and learn about what I'm passionate about. So I came in with a couple of things in mind. Mostly I was really wanting to get internships revolving around theater, and I did. I achieved that. I went to MTYP, Manitoba Theatre for Young People, but I also dabbled with film and ultimately decided to go with science. And I really enjoyed that. Although I did have my fair share of struggles when I was starting out, but around the time of grade 11, when I was really starting to solidify everything, I really found a love of physics especially, and then I went on to do chemistry, which I didn't love so much, but I'm getting used to it now, and biology as well. 2020, the year of COVID-19. So this year obviously was a struggle for everybody, I believe, and I had a hard time because I had quite a bit of a social scene, and a lot of the activities I enjoyed revolved around big groups of people, or just groups of people. And it was difficult to not be able to see anybody really, and I picked up a hobby of crocheting, and this is something I still do to this day, and I think that crocheting was very therapeutic for me, and I also continued on running. 2020 also provided a bit of a mess in my brain regarding what I was going to do in the future. I had no idea what I wanted to do at this point because my life was sort of not as I knew it anymore. And so I started exploring science a bit more because I really enjoyed it in grade 9. So I fully delved into it. I swam as deep as I could into the waters of science, and I found that I really enjoyed it. I did a couple projects revolving around herbicides and plants, and I actually really enjoyed it. Ultimately, I decided the specific science field I want to go into is engineering. I'm not sure exactly which type of engineering yet, but I think that that's something for future me to figure out. Because, again, I'm still young. So in 2022, I have solidified those goals and secured an internship at the U of M with an electrochemist, where we do a lot of electrochemistry and just outcomes such as that. And as you can see, there's a little computer with a graph and some electrodes, not very well drawn, but you get the point. I also continued with crocheting and also running, and these things have sort of stuck with me throughout the years. And also I picked up a little bit of Russian. There's really no reason for that. It doesn't really apply to anything, but I just thought I would do it. That says, my name is Anantjot. Меня зовут Anantjot. Anyway, so I think that ultimately I have had a lot of these experiences that have led to who I am today and will ultimately lead to who I will be in the future. And although I don't know what I will do in the upcoming years, I hope that I can continue to learn, because ultimately that's the most important thing. And that's the end of my autobiography. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed and learned a little bit about me and my childhood and my passions, and thank you very much. Goodbye!